Hi, everyone. I'm Denise O'Malley, the founder of You Define Wellness, and thank you for joining me for another Apple a Day. It's part of our webinar series to help you with wellness in your business, your body, and your life. Today, we're going to talk about embodiment coach or parenting. And I just butchered that to no end, but that's what we do with a live presentation here. But I want to say thank you for joining me, but I also want you to help me welcome my guest speaker today, who will not butcher what the title is going to be. And joining us is Mary Dravis-Parrish, and then I did it again. Mary, thank you for joining me today. This is what happens when you have one call after another call and after another call. I know exactly who you are and how to say it, so I apologize about that.
You know what? People will remember now.
Yes. And they'll keep watching to see if I flub up anymore.
Oh.
That just tends to happen. But anyways, I am really excited to have you as a speaker today and just to talk about what you're doing, because you originally got my attention when we first met because of your focus on parenting and some of the stuff that you're doing in the area of parenting. So I'm going to allow you to talk about what you do and share with us your mighty superpowers.
All right. Well, stepping into those empowerment tools, it is about empowered parenting is my focus. So oftentimes, I know when I was looking for parenting help, I was looking for somebody to solve my problems, to look at my child and almost validate my own beliefs that there was something wrong going on and how could we fix it. And that didn't really work out so well. And what I found through the journey through that is that what was missing was me. And that sense that, what do I know? What is my awareness? How can I be empowered to show up to be more of who I am and not what I think the world wants me to be?
Oh, wow. Okay. That's pretty powerful right there. And that takes some people a lifetime to get to that point. So you are, in finding your place in yourself, you're able to help your clients explore through it as well.
Yes.
Yeah. Are there any special tools or techniques that you're doing to help someone get to that point?
So yeah, there's a variety of techniques, and it is all about allowing people to be empowered to choose what works for them too. So it's about opening up the possibilities. And one of the best tools I know for that is to be in the question, not the solution or the conclusion or the assumption or the judgment, but actually to be in the space of possibility and to ask what else is possible here that I've never even thought of, and allowing that to open up into something greater and trusting that it will show up and that you'll know what it is. And it's beyond what our thinking knowing is. It's about our real, genuine, conscious awareness knowing. And that's empowering because you're not limited by anything. So being in the question is one of the first tools we practice in BU parenting, to be able to ask those questions and to let go of my thoughts, my feelings, my expectations, my conclusions about my own past experiences. Like, how many parents bring in their past experience and project it onto their kids as if that's what they expect is going to happen to their kids, rather than being in a space of allowing their kids to create their life, their journey, their choices from their own awareness and from their own information. And how freeing that is for us. And so, yeah, it's really about reducing that stress that parents take on through this different process.
Being a parent is the toughest job on the planet. I'm a big believer of that now that I have two who are still teenagers and one who has survived teenage years to, he's 21. And I never knew how difficult it was and how stressful it is. So when people are coming to you and seeking you out, I mean, are they just at their wits' end and it's like, okay, I am just so frustrated, I have nowhere else to go? Tell me a little bit about how they're coming to you and their state of mind.
Yeah, and so it's not much different than where I was searching with my kids when there was a behavior issue or a conflict, or my kids are making choices and I really felt like I had failed and I had done something wrong. And oh my gosh, I've damaged this child. I just read on Facebook today a mother who posted, "I hope I'm not a failure to my child." And it was like, oh my gosh, like what if we didn't worry about failing and we were and we put more energy into being who we are and trusting our kids to be who they are. But that's how people often come to me, is they're at their wits end and they don't know what else to do because their point of reference doesn't serve them, whether it's their past point of reference, how they were parented, how they for sure don't want to be parented, all those things that they've kind of resisted and limited themselves in. And so then it's my job to create the world of possibilities for them to step into, so that they can have the freedom to explore this adventure of parenting. And I believe it's one of the toughest jobs in the world because it challenges us to see who we are and how we're showing up.
Wow. I have so many different directions I want to go with this conversation, Mary. Um, so when I get to this stage, I typically bring in my own life, my past history, because that's what I have to go from. And I know that when I became a parent 21 years ago, I was scared to death to become a mom. It wasn't that I hadn't been around little kids. It wasn't that I didn't know how to change diapers. I did know how to change diapers, but I was terrified of what to do with this little being because of a lifetime, a generational issue of parenting within my family. And I didn't have that skill set to know how to be a present mom. And how do you work with parents to find that, relieve that type of stress?
The first thing we do is we focus on what is it that you want to be for your kids? Like, what is it that you really want to provide, show up as? What are your hopes and dreams in that area? And we look at, is that really in true alignment with who you are? For example, a lot of parents say, well, I feel really responsible that I have to keep my kids safe.
Mm.
And that projects a reality that the world isn't safe. And that's what our kids then are in tune to. Rather than, I want my kids to grow up and be aware of the world around them so that they can make choices based on what they know inside and what they sense, and not so much out of fear or worry or doubt. And so moving them into that space. But what I believe, it can't happen unless the parent themselves experiences that.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's my focus on the BU parenting, is you be this first. Like, you explore what it's like to let go of your safety issues and discover and acknowledge what you've always created and how you've always moved through it, even though it hasn't looked the way maybe you thought it would or the way you wanted it to. And even when you were talking about coming into being a parent, you prefaced it by saying, I do know how to do this, I do know how to do that. But it was like, but all of that got forgotten somewhere when it became tuning into, well, what if I don't, or do I have enough, or I don't know how to be present, or, it was like the mind took over, right?
Right.
Like, I watched your mind do this thing where it's like, I do know how, I don't know how, and going back and forth with this conflictual reality of, okay, so how do I be this? And we've got to kind of move that out of the way and know what really truly is. Here's this infant, here's this new being. How can I be with it in all its presence, in all that I am?
Yeah.
And what if that's all that's really required? We look at so much of what's expected and what has to occur for things to happen, and we forget just how dynamic and powerful these little beings are.
And it's also, for me, everything is, intellectually, I may know this. Emotionally, it's not in congruency with each other. It's really what I feel you're talking about is letting go of the false expectations of what we place on ourselves, of what the ideal world is, and when it's not in alignment with our reality of who we are. And that really sounds like what you're talking about.
Yeah, and maybe the only thing I would adjust in that, but absolutely, is not the reality of who I am, but the capacity of what I know I can be.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. But I think I love what you're doing because parenting is such a stressor. And, you know, everything that I do is all about wellness in the workplace and helping employees who, most of whom are parents, many of whom are, um, uh, deal with those stresses. And those stresses that they bring in from home is one of the leading causes of workplace dissatisfaction because you haven't addressed those type of things. So I love what you're doing and helping people that way. Can you walk us through what it is like to become a client? How, when somebody walks through your door, I noticed on your website you have a pre-appointment questionnaire, and I will share that for everyone before her website before we're done here. So they fill out the pre-appointment questionnaire and they sit down with you. It's obviously not a one and done because you don't have a magic wand. You're really good at what you do, but you don't have a magic wand. So do you put them into some sort of a program? How long are they working with you? I know that varies. What is it like working with Mary?
Yeah. Well, it's customized. So based on that questionnaire that just basically lists what are your concerns, what have you tried, how would your life be different if this were resolved, those types of things. And then from there we can kind of get a sense of what type and how much work to do. Normally I start people off with 4 sessions, and that can be it can be coaching, and where I give you tools and then I send you home and you practice those tools. And I will tell you, parents there is an ease to parenting that people are experiencing when they use these tools, like going home and they just start asking questions. And then they come back and say, okay, well, that created a lot more space. Mm-hmm. And now I'm having this issue. And so then we just continue in that way, or we expand and take it further. You know, I'd love to just dump the tool bag into your lap, but it's overwhelming. Yeah. And it's not that one tool does everything. It's having a resource of tools to go to and to use. The other process that I use is some energy work for the clients that I see in person. And so that can be the technique called access bars, which I think you're familiar with, right, Denise?
I am very. Mm-hmm.
And what I love about the bars is it helps to release and let go of those thoughts, feelings, and emotions that you're tied to, that you're just finding it difficult to let go of. And that creates so much more space and receptivity for the client to be able to then choose to use these tools in a different way and to let go of those judgments and just the stuff that keeps you stuck. And so that creates more ease. And so it's kind of a combination of what feels right for the client too, as they're ready to progress. Mm-hmm. And so I have clients who come in and it's like, just coach me for a while. And then there's others who like, just run my bars today. That would really be great. Like, I just really feel all the mind chatter taking over, and the bars help create more ease in that. So, and I've got a whole set of toolbox that I go through too. So depending on what's required in that session, that's what I'll use.
Now you also do workshops, right?
I do. As a matter of fact, I have a 4-week online series coming up in August to work with people to develop your direction of where are you and where do you want to go with your parenting. Kind of getting that GPS calibrated to be on target with what you truly want in parenting, mm-hmm. and then bring in the tools that will support that. I think a lot of us are using outdated tools that our parents used, and we maybe think they worked on us, but as I look back, it's like, no offense to my parents, but that really didn't work so well for me. It created a lot of fear or a lot of anxiety or whatever that was. So up-to-date tools. And then we're going to talk about empowered discipline and what that looks like, as well as ending the power struggles that happen between parents and kids, and how parents can be empowered to empower their kids.
So those last two, I think, are huge in and of themselves, and definitely worth the price of admission. And more information, I know, is on your website for anybody who wants to go to that. Let's talk about empowered discipline, because I think discipline is first of all, it's one of the huge factors of what goes into the stress. But, let's talk about discipline. Do you have one tip that you can share with people about discipline or what empowered discipline means?
Yeah, so empowered discipline is about letting go of your control, of having to change the situation and moving to asking the question of what's really going on here. So every behavior from a child comes from something that they need or want. And so when we can identify what that is and acknowledge it, I see that you really want this. And then ask the questions of what else is possible? How else can we get this? And this is really simplifying a lot of this, but it's really about moving into a process that moves through it to where discipline doesn't even really, especially punishment, consequences, all that stuff doesn't come into it, but the parent's awareness of what's really, truly required here does. And a real quick example of that was I had a parent come in recently, and their form of discipline was to have their child stand there for 5 minutes, kind of like in the corner or whatever, their own little timeout. And it wasn't really working because the child would just sit there and stew and, nothing really happened. And so it was like, well, what else would be possible? And what would happen if you left for 5 minutes and you didn't say anything to your child, but you removed yourself for 5 minutes, and that was your timeout to process, ask questions, step into what you know, kind of just, and I had the parent come back and tell me she did that. And she said it was so amazing because she came back and the child had come up with what was going on, how they could work together. I mean, he solved it all on his own. And they ended up enjoying the time together and having fun. And so it's like, who would have thought that that could happen from something that you feel like needs to be disciplined or addressed in a negative way?
Well, that's awesome. I used to do mommy timeouts all the time.
Mm-hmm. We need them really more than the kids do. And often it's because we need them that they are reacting the way they are, because they're feeding off of our own anxiety and frustration as well.
And it kind of turns the table where they're suddenly looking at the situation of mommy is upset. I need to help fix this. At least it was with my kids, as opposed to me yelling and them saying, oh, mom's upset again. It just
Right.
changed the emotion.
Yeah, because you're not projecting any guilt on them. They're just able to assess the situation for what it is and then move into, okay, so what can we do about this? Kids are actually much greater at that than we are if we just learn from them.
I'd like to say it's because we have more baggage that we've built up over the years.
Which we're also very good at projecting onto them and letting them carry some of our baggage with us.
Absolutely. Let's talk about your book.
Ah, yeah.
Yeah. Tell us about is 2 books or 1?
Well, I do have 2 books. So the first book, Empowered Parents, Empowering Kids, and it's a guide to BU parenting. And so in that book, it's really it's not a book you just read all the way through. It's a step-by-step kind of journal type reflection, takes you through all the different tools. You don't have to start at the beginning and go through. You can open it and it's like, oh, that's exactly what I need today type of thing. It's got the questions, how to have choice, letting go of the wrongness of you, really asking those deep questions about what it means to be a parent and seeing them for what they are and letting go and choosing something different. The other book is Possibilities in Parenting, which I co-authored with 19 other parents. And what I love about that book is that all these different parents share how they apply these tools to do it different, to do it in a way that honors them and their needs, and the willingness to honor their kids and themselves and create it in a whole new way. And so there's lots of examples of that in that book.
Oh, and for those who are watching this webinar, go to Mary's website. I'll give you the link at the end here, but those books are available or talked about on your website as well. And they're available at both Amazon and Barnes & Noble, at least the first book.
Right. But they're both on Amazon.
They're both on Amazon, so it's a great way to get those. So let's talk about, you have the one class that is going on, and it sounds like you also have, from looking at your website, that you also have some group sessions where people can join in as a group. Is that something you're doing?
Yes. So I do have those ongoing off and on. I've actually taken a reprieve from those this summer as I've started a weekly BU parenting radio show.
Ooh.
And So that's on Inspired Choices Network. And you can tune in and you can listen live. You can call in with questions, or you can listen to the replays as podcasts. And so that's really been fun. And I talk about guilt-free parenting, letting go of fear. Today was about mindless parenting, like the benefit of losing your mind as a parent. I mean, we complain that our kids are making us lose our minds, when in actuality, it can really be a benefit. So we talked about that. And so it's a really fun program, and people can get lots of tips and tools through that program.
So the one that I have to mention, because it's I have high school students, is that you also have a class starting August 10th in Fort Collins for Prepare for High School Success.
Yes.
For kids and parents, or just?
Yeah. So I'm partnering with Leading Learners, and they're going to take the kids and tutor them, or not tutor them, and give them tools for empowered learning through the high school years, how to deal with peers and academics and all of that. And I'm going to take the parents and give them tools so they can feel successful in dealing with their high school students throughout the whole, from the 9th to the 12th grade years, and how they can show up and support their kids in ways that maybe they never even thought of before. We'll address those fears that they have and how they can be empowered and feel confident and trust themselves through that process. It's a difficult time, and with all that's going on in our world with shootings, drugs, peer pressure, social media, all that stuff, how can a parent really feel confident and trust themselves to guide their kids through these years?
It's traumatic when something happens at the school, and we're not empowered to be able to deal with those situations. And so to know that there is this program out there is, I think it's just huge, because I know we've dealt with the suicide of a classmate. We've dealt with the school shootings that go on, and the stressors are different than when we were kids. And so that's a terrific event that you have going on. So I'm going to actually backtrack now, because we have shown your vast experience and knowledge, and you are absolutely the expert. Tell us how you got into it.
Well, it's been a journey, and so my parenting began at this age of 17.
Oh my!
And part of me was kind of cocky, thinking, oh, I can do this. Basically, it was because I didn't know what I wanted to do as far as college. And so I think it was kind of subconsciously my out. And I knew I always wanted to be a mom and have a family. I mean, I think that was just what I expected for myself. And so through the course of that, trying to do parenting correctly, just kind of led me into all kinds of disappointments. My first marriage didn't work out, so became a single parent. And then, looking still to have that perfect family, and, moving into my next marriage and getting pregnant, doing it right this time. I'm going to plan it. I'm going to stay home with him. I'm going to do all that. Well, sometimes our best laid plans are the ones that really kick us in the rear. 8 years after middle son was born, my third son came along after I thought we were all done having kids and had pretty much given up and decided, well, I'll go get a career teaching and do all that. But so sandwiched in between these two oops babies was my perfect baby. Mm-hmm. And I've come into the awareness that that projection that I wanted so badly was projected onto him. And I could never understand why he kept thinking he needed to be perfect. Because it wasn't really what I wanted him to have to feel, but it was what I wanted for my life. And what happened with Ben, my dear middle son, at the age of 19, through the course of a lot of depression and high expectations for himself, he took his life. And so moving through that journey of what does it mean to be a parent after you feel like you've failed and you've taken on the guilt, and none of the worry that you had really did any good. Where do I go from here? And do I even want to stick around and continue this? How can I be any good for my remaining children? All of that led me into the process of asking questions, and lo and behold, allowing people and events to show up in my life that showed me that I could do this and that I could come through this, the other side, completely different. I knew it was time for a change in my life. And it offered me the opportunity to really look at it and to choose for it. and for me, which I'd never really done in my life before. Everything had always been for expectations, for appearances, for making everybody else happy, which is where I think a lot of women live their lives.
Mm-hmm.
But for me to go on and to move through this, it had to be different. And it had to be in such a way that would honor the life of my son, not through regret and guilt and sadness and sorrow and living in from trauma, but from really moving into a place of joyful living, like truly living. And I had never really done that. And I have to say today, I experience it much more than I ever have before. And I am eternally grateful for that event in my life to have moved me into the space where I can be this for me and to share it with others.
Wow, I'm touched by your story. Thank you for sharing that. You know, having worked now with and spoken with hundreds of wellness professionals over the last few years, every one of them is doing what they're doing because they're passionate and because of their own life path, which brings even greater benefits for the people that they are able to help, because you have walked in their shoes and you know exactly where, which then does nothing but make you better at what you're doing. So thank you for sharing that with me.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now where do we go from here? I wasn't expecting that story, but I appreciate it. So tell me what you would like to, as you were thinking about leading into this talk today, what were the things that you wanted to make sure that we were able to cover, the message that you want to share with people?
Well, I think one of the reasons I can connect so well with parents is because I've lived that fear, like that ultimate fear that parents have is that something will happen to their children. And the message I really want parents to know is that we don't know the future. We don't know the future course of our children. And as much as we would like to make it be as positive as possible, I mean, even in the course of my life, I believe that what occurred in my life wasn't all bad and traumatic, that there's a positive to it. There's my life, and I believe that it's allowed me to access my son even in a different way, that he's free to go on in a different way. And so it's not up to us as parents to decide what that is for our kids. It's up to us to receive it and to be with it and to be empowered through it. And so regardless of what the stress is that you're going through with your children, there's a place for gratitude for it. There's a place for recognizing there's a gift here. And there's a place for getting to access more of who you are through the reaction you're having. Like, what is that really about? What if I don't have to react that way? What is my reaction steeped in? Is it based on fear? Is it based on my own experiences? And how can I be free of those to live a life that's more joyful, more abundant in all ways, right? And how can I receive my children more in that space? Because if you're living out of fear and worry, you can't receive your children. You can't receive the gift that they be. And so this is what empowered parenting is. It's about building this closer relationship. It's not a relationship so much as it's a communion of being with your kids and not making them into who you are or what you think they should be, but being okay with exactly who they are in this moment.
What's your goal for the future? What's the big picture?
I think is to continue to expand in getting this message out. And how that happens, I'm not really sure. But I just see, and I'm already seeing how there's more and more conscious parenting awareness out there, and that it doesn't have to be me. It's more people. It's even the people I reach, the parents I work with, and as they share it. So that big ripple effect, if I could just be part of that big ripple, that would just thrill me to no end. And to know that people are picking this up and going with it, and exploring it, what it is for them. It's not like do it Mary's way or do it. It's like really being empowered to do it the way that works for you and empowers you. And so just continuing to get that out there, speak to more groups, be with more parents, share the message. I'm pretty filled with joy doing that.
You are already starting the ripple, Mary. So you're already there. I am going to share Mary's website at this point in time. There we go. So a couple things about her website. Go to buparenting.com and you're going to find all kinds of information about her program, what she's doing. She has a few free gifts on here as well as the empowerment survey. Can you mention what the empowerment survey is all about?
Oh, yes. So the empowerment survey just asks you some different questions so you can get a sense of how empowered are you and what are the areas where you're giving away your power. So if you worry about your kids a lot, if you judge their choices, if you judge your choices, I mean, there's 14 questions, and then it will take you to the results of that survey and how you can begin to change those aspects. So it just kind of gives you a sense of your level of empowerment.
Well, that's a beautiful gift that you are doing. So they take the survey, it goes in, and then you respond back to them.
Well, actually, it's an automatic response. But if you find that you need some help with any of those areas, then for sure, schedule a consultation with me and we can start working on those.
And I put Mary's phone number on there, highlighted it. So this is something, I'm going to stop the share now so that I can look back at her, and feel free to go back and pause that and capture it and go to her website and check it out. You are based in Fort Collins, but you can work with people anywhere, it sounds like.
That's correct, yes.
Okay, so use the power of technology and telephones and computers to be able to meet with anyone anywhere. Now, are you also traveling out of state? Are you open to speaking gigs that way?
Absolutely. This last spring, I did speaking engagements for the Early Childhood Conference, where all the early childhood workers who are also parents come, and I got to speak there, as well as the Parent Possible Conference. And so, yes, I'm always I'll go wherever. Well, I probably should maybe preface that, but
you're on a mission to spread awareness about this concept that I'd never heard of before until you and I met, of empowerment parenting. And that I've heard about things in different ways, but you're just taking a different approach to it. And I know I love it. It resonates with me very well. It's just outside of the box thinking for me, and I love outside of the box thinking. So that's absolutely awesome.
And just recently, I did an online book study with a group of women from Holland. Which was amazing. So it's like the far reaches to go global with this. And I find that parents, no matter what country, we all share a lot of the same sense of responsibility and fears and worries and guilt that we carry. And so that was really lots of fun. And so I'm always open to doing things like that. And we create it however we can make it work.
That's awesome. Something I remembered just all of a sudden, my fault for ignoring this before now, wasn't there something that occurred in the last week or so that I made a comment to you to say, make sure we talk about it today?
Right. And I think it was either one of the events, which we've talked about, or the radio show, because those would have been the three things that I posted. So
I think it was the radio show.
I think we got there.
Yeah, I think we got there. Wasn't 100% positive, but I couldn't remember exactly what it was. Anything else you want to add today? I think we've covered a lot, and I'm just so glad. But any last words of wisdom?
Yeah, I always begin my sessions letting parents know that you are doing the best you can with what you have right now. And so there's no place for you to really judge yourself. You can step into the awareness of what else is possible and what else can I do and what changes can I make. But know that you're doing the best that you can right now with what you have. And that's the place to start with.
And with that, I'm going to thank everyone for joining us today. My thanks especially to you, Mary, for sharing this wonderful information. You can find all of our webinars as well as this one. It will be posted soon to youtube.com. Just look for the You Define Wellness channel, or find us on an apple a day on our Facebook page for You Define Wellness. So thank you for being with us today. And Mary, again, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Denise.